Hey guys, Anfield here. As you can see by this title, I hope to help people take on the Black Shrine boss Sangoon on the Calamity 7 level. The reason I want to help people beat Sangoon on Calamity 7 is because doing so activates a channel-wide 20% drop rate buff for 3 hours. I've been doing this regularly, but it would be great if more people could do it also. So why Sangoon? You do have two other options with the bosses that have the aura for the earth, which is what drops to 20%, but simply these fights are harder and much longer. Sangoon can be done in half the time of these other bosses. Before we start, I'll quickly mention buffs. It's important you understand that although bosses are AP and DP capped, they are not hard capped. 10% of your AP and DP is effective, but perhaps even more important is HP. HP is not capped at all, and a large HP pool can save your life. There are times when you can take damage and even be left with a small amount of HP, but you live because you had that HP, leading to overall more successful attempts. Stamina may also be useful depending on your class. I recommend stacking attack speed, monster damage, HP on hit, and crit rate for your add-ons. My buffs are pretty basic with church buffs and simple Kron, Villa, and I do use Corrupted Frenzy and Bracing Spirit Perfume, although you can use the regular ones. You can run a full elixir rotation if you like, but I don't feel like I need it and want to keep it kind of simple personally. I'll also leave a picture of my equipment, which includes crystals, artifacts, and my gear, although the gear doesn't actually get specialized in any kind of way, although you could try to get more HP, I suppose. In total, I typically have around 8,000 HP, which lets me live general chip damage safer and also some mistakes. So let's begin with the start of the fight. Annoyingly, Sangoon always starts with an ability in which you are stunned, and then he hits you for about 80% of your HP and leaves you slow. During this time, usually I like to set the fight to the boss view mode, which is in the top right of your screen that you get during world bosses. I think it just helps. You can't avoid this, but if you do press V, you actually do dodge all of the slows and the damage, which you can do if you want to. Of course, you can't do that for every attempt if your attempts are pretty fast. You can do it, but frankly, you don't need to. You can just be careful once this happens and try to keep to his back. It doesn't take very long after the fight begins, and he will just sort of go into an iframe and he backs away from you and disappears. This is your first mechanic, and it is an important one. After a few seconds, you'll see the message on your screen. You feel a chill down your spine. This is letting you know that Sangoon is about to attack. This is why I recommend you e-buff first. You'll need to e-buff later too, but this will help you because if you e-buff early, you have the cooldown later for the final 20% of the fight, and it's super important that you have your e-buff for the final 20% of the fight. So you must hit him here with a stiffen to disable him. I think knockback might also work, but I'm not 100% certain, but stiffen definitely works. Once you do stiffen Sangoon, it'll stun him, and you also get to deal quite a lot of damage to his back because he'll be stunned, but importantly, he'll lose his DP buff, and your damage will increase a lot at this point. After he recovers, he will keep turning around to face you and project attacks towards you. You should try to avoid these by using any mobility skill, but preferably any PvE iframe to get to his back each time. He will repeat these types of patterns quite a lot during the fight, and as you gain experience, you'll gain a timer in your head for how long you can hit his back before he turns towards you. Sangoon will also jump backwards a lot. This is to try and get behind you, and sometimes he'll do a forward cone attack after an initial jump, and that's marked in the floor. This is a great time to do damage to his back. This pattern is repeated early, usually twice. He will do this attack later, so sometimes as well. Other times he'll jump back many times, and this will be annoying because occasionally he'll go out of bounds, and you can't really get behind him because he's out of bounds, so you just kind of need to run back towards the center and try and bait him back towards you. Usually after the second cone attack, but depending on his HP, as you can force his face earlier if you've done more damage, he will jump out of the arena and you'll see a message reading, "How pathetic, you'll soon be torn apart by my teeth." This message indicates that he will do a mechanic which only he will do one time, but essentially he'll land onto the side of the arena that has the pathway that leads to the mountain exit, which has that tiger face. This is never random, it's always the same place, and you will need to iframe his landing portion. If you are limited on iframes here, you can time it pretty comfortably with practice, and since this is roughly 1 minute into the fight, it's pretty easy to practice. Once he lands, you can sort of begin cooking on his back, while the game will tell you Sangoon prepares a powerful attack. Don't let the red circle here bother you. You just need to do lots and lots of damage to his back to prevent the sort of charge attack he wants to do. If successful, you will see a red smaller circle and the words Sangoon failed to gather the energy and couldn't keep the posture. You'll only have about a second here to react and iframe. You don't have to, but if you don't iframe it, he'll CC and slow you down, which just kind of annoying. But ultimately, this shouldn't kill you anyway, so don't sweat about it too much. Frankly, I haven't tried to block this, so I'm not sure if it's possible, like if you have a super armor block. Like other parts of the fight, Decent can ignore your iframe anyway, and you might get CC'd even if you correctly iframe. So after you've survived that charge attack, attack, it should give you the stage where you get the second chill down your spine message. You should know what you have to do here. You do the same moves as before. This removes his AP buff this time, and helpful for the later fight in case you get CC'd but are able to tank the damage and recover. Before long, you'll see the whole arena light up in red, so this signifies a new attack. This mechanic should only happen about twice in the fight, I think, and you can immediately identify it as it is accompanied by the words, "I shall tear you to pieces with these claws." This mechanic will one-shot you if you do not iframe it. If you're unlucky, desync will kill you anyway, but it is what it is. But you have to iframe this or you are dead. After that, you'll do some recycled pattern damage. This is pretty straightforward. You might have already sort of got familiar with this at this point. He jumps backwards, he tries to catch you, and you'll do his cone attack sometimes. But the next timer you will activate after doing enough damage will trigger rocks to fall down from the ceiling. You should just dodge these as they will CC you and you could be killed by Sangoon if you're CC'd. You keep fighting Sangoon until he disappears again, and you'll see a message, "I shall kill all those who walk on 2 feet." Upon reading this message, you will need to hide behind these rocks. Try to choose the biggest rock, but to be honest, I've done this correctly and died, and I'm not sure if it's coded super well. Usually your rock gets destroyed or you get pushed out, but you should only take about 2,000 damage, so don't panic too much if that happens. After this, you will fight him as he tries to chase you around, doing familiar mechanics you've faced before. However, around 40% HP, you'll get a notice telling you that Tiger Palace begins to shake and rocks start to fall. This is a tricky phase because periodically the outer circle will have rocks falling down, which will not only CC you, but also do quite a good amount of damage to you. And then, of course, Sangoon is chasing you the whole time. What makes this increasingly difficult is Sangoon will sometimes back into the outer arena to do his forward cone attack, but at the same time, the rocks are falling, so you can't actually sit behind him. You need to be super careful with here and try to time, if you're going to go behind him when he's in the outer area, make sure that the rocks have only just fallen so that they're not going to come anytime soon. You need to also be aware of the big central rock that will come down in the center of the arena. This is like a massive rock that will CC you. This part of the fight will require a great deal of concentration, and Sangoon will occasionally disappear and then jump back again in the center with a red AoE, so you need to make sure you're iframing that, because it does warn you about it, but you make sure you iframe that. Finally, Sangoon will sort of spam what looks like a circle AoE at you constantly, so he keeps like turning around circles as he chases you around. This will charge for about a second, then he'll turn to face your last location. I'm fairly certain this isn't like a 360 degree of damage. I usually just iframe it, but it's just to let you know that he could end up facing anywhere and do the damage in any direction that you were just at the last point. So just kind of relocate quickly if you can, preferably, again, iframe it. Finally, when you get Sangoon to 20% health, you're in the final stage of the fight. He'll tell you, "I am the ruler of the Tiger Palace of Tebek, Sangoon." Then he disappears. Then he'll reappear in the center of the arena and charge an attack in a sort of callback to the earlier charge attack move, but it's not really the same. In this instance, it's basically, you do free real estate damage, but what you should save your E-buff is for this moment now. So this is why we E-buffed early, so it would be off on cooldown for this final 20% stage, because the last stage is a DPS race against the clock. No matter how long or how poorly you do in the early parts of the fight, as long as you make it to 20%, all that matters is your performance in the last 20%. The rest of it doesn't matter. You could have taken double the amount of time I took. It doesn't matter. You have to do this stage correctly. So basically, if you fail, he kills you. There's a timer. As soon as he begins this phase, there's a timer and you're against that clock. Now, during this phase, many things sort of happen. Sangoon doesn't actually attack you personally, but there's many like random patterns of rocks, and the timings are completely like all over the place with these rocks. Essentially, the rocks will fall and CC you just like in the earlier stage with the rocks, so you need to avoid the circle AoEs on the floor. There is going to be one big center AoE that warns you of a giant falling rock directly on Sangoon. You need to back away from this when this happens, and then once it drops, you can re-engage him. If you have range damage, use range damage during this period. CCs here basically cripple your chances of DPSing this time. The rock shouldn't kill you. They will CC you, and you don't want that because essentially you won't have the DPS to kill him in time. In fact, in this particular kill clip, I actually do get hit super early with that big rock I told you all to avoid. I wasn't expecting it, so it CC'd me. I was convinced I'd failed, actually, but I did make it, but usually it doesn't allow too many mistakes here in this case. But like I said, most of the time I'm used to that big falling rock. It usually comes sort of towards the end of the DPS race. It was immediate there, so just to point out that it is completely random. There's also these sort of pizza slice AoEs on the floor, and there's like gaps. You think, oh, I have to go in those gaps to not be hit by that. Nah, it's super small amounts of damage. I would just ignore that. Literally, circles bad, pizza's fine. Only really if you come into this final stage with like no HP would you have to worry about the actual pizza AoE is what I'm going to call it. So that's it. Just circle AoEs, don't get CC'd. If you see the text, I, Protector of this land, cannot be defeated, that means that you only have a few seconds left before the fight is over, so that's only a few seconds left to defeat Sangoon, but obviously you should just be focused 100% on your DPS rotations, as it makes no difference if you're close or not. You should just be giving everything regardless. So yeah, that's it. Hopefully I've explained the fight enough to save you some trial and error, but ultimately it comes with practice and experience. For me, I'm very comfortable with the fight now, and you only usually fail it when the game doesn't work. But yeah, good luck, and thanks for giving everybody the buff.